Covered my place because they're taking pictures and all that stuff. I mean, this is what we've come to in America, huh? These guys call themselves patriots? Really?
The effects of election conspiracy theories are already on full display here in the swing state of Arizona. Armed men stalking vote drop boxes, prompting voters to hide their identities, and even cover their license plates as they go to vote.
If a guy's standing over there, he's got his face covered, and he's armed, what's that tell you? They don't want you to vote. They don't want you to vote.
The midterm election is right around the corner, which means one thing. Republicans are already casting doubt on the results. And you might think, how could that happen? We haven't had the election yet. We don't know how these races turned out. That doesn't matter. When you're a Republican, now that's the game. It's not win by the most votes, it's how can you cast the most doubt on the outcome? How can you inspire your supporters to distrust the election results? How can they spend the next 2 or 4 years complaining that it was stolen?
There's no question, and it's been widely reported, that there was widespread fraud and irregularities across this country.
Many of us were warning about the fact that the Democrats unilaterally, fundamentally altered our voting system inside 90 days. We warned that the state of Nevada was just simply not ready to give us a fully fair and secure election.
If I was a United States Senator on the day of the certification, I would have stood with Senator Cruz and Senator Scott and that small handful of senators who had the courage to stand up and say, wait, let's hold up on the certification of this election.
We've seen these attacks on the electoral process now for a few cycles. They started small, but Trump really brought them into the mainstream. That obviously culminated in January 6th. But now there's a ton of Republicans even running for office, for Secretary of State, or for Board of Elections positions, who specifically want to cast doubt or even overturn the results of the elections. And that's bad for democracy, it's bad for society, it's bad for all of us, because then we don't really live in a free and fair system. I mean, you could argue that we never really did to begin with, but that's a whole different conversation. When they're specifically running with that intent, that totally undercuts the entire premise of our electoral process. So that's what they're doing. And people in the Republican Party and Republican pundits are fanning those flames. You've seen how they have inspired people to show up to ballot drop boxes. They show up in masks, they bring guns. They're not doing it to preserve any integrity. They're not doing it to make sure there's no voter fraud. They're doing it to scare people from voting. They're trying to suppress the vote. They might wink and nod and insinuate that all they care about is to protect election integrity, but that's obviously bull. You know that, I know that, we all know that, but that's what they're trying to spin it as. And here's the thing, it's not even working in some Republican camps. There are lifelong Republicans who've said, this is disgusting, this needs to stop. So it's really just the fringe of the Republican Party, but that is growing.
And I'm a Republican, but I'm an American first. I mean, it's funny. I mean, I voted a lot of times, I'm in my 60s, and this is the first time that an election's ever been stolen.
And one of the people who are really trying to make that grow is Tucker Carlson. And he has cast doubt on the 2020 election since it happened. But now he's also trying to cast doubt on the results in Brazil.
So Brazil just held its presidential election. The runoff was Sunday. According to official figures, the incumbent president, Jair Bolsonaro, was narrowly defeated by his far-left convicted criminal opponent, Lula da Silva. But questioning the election results in Brazil is no longer allowed there, or even here. YouTube has just announced it will censor any posts that raise doubts about the vote total. In a statement, YouTube told us they have, quote, expanded our existing election integrity policy to prohibit content advancing false claims that widespread fraud, errors, or glitches occurred in the 2022 Brazil presidential election. Well, wait a second. The election is still ongoing.
Because Bolsonaro lost his election, and that fascist who led Brazil the past few years is close with Tucker Carlson. And even though 100% of the votes came in and Lula won, Tucker is still on his show saying the election is happening. That's not true. And he's upset because YouTube is prohibiting content lying about the outcome of the election. Those lies include saying the election is still happening or that the results are contested. Here's the thing. He's pointing to Bolsonaro not conceding. That doesn't mean the election is still happening. That means Bolsonaro is a sore loser. Those are two totally different things. 100% of the votes have been counted and Lula won by 2%. I'm sorry that the fascists didn't get reelected and that's upsetting to you, but that doesn't change the outcome. But they're going to continue to drive this, potentially to see some sort of January 6th-like action in Brazil, or some sort of interference from Lula taking power again. When these types of things and these types of conspiracy theories spread, it does a disservice to all of us. It weakens our electoral systems, it weakens our democracy, it weakens our political system. Conspiracy theories should never be the dominant narrative in an election. But the thing is, the Republicans have become so desperate in their attempts to cling to the levers of power, that's what they're resorting to first.